to the Schuby Show's YouTube channel.
Okay.
And here we are. Wow. That's cool. Very
So we're
cool.
officially live.
We are live. Man, I'm going to go ahead and mute that. Man, that is, yeah, I think I'm the only one watching right now.
Hey, that's okay. That's okay.
I'm going to go ahead and share it. If you want to go ahead and share it too.
Yeah,
before we get started here. This is very quality YouTubing right here.
Just, sharing the video during it.
Hey guys, this is how the professionals do it, okay? Just wanted you to know that. I'll actually send it to you so that way you don't have to. I don't know if you found it already or not. But...
Oh, here it is. I got it on YouTube. I looked you up.
All right.
Can you still hear me okay?
It's kind of choppy a little bit. Hopefully.
Man, technology. Copy link.
All right, one more share and then we're going to get started. Or two more shares, I take that back.
Yes, sir, we are.
Okay. Still got my Happy Independence Day picture on the Schuby Show's Facebook page. So that's good. A little late there on the Independence Day, but you know, it is what it is. So, see how many people are watching this. Just one, just me so far. Okay, that's okay. Like I said, hello everyone. First of all, again, welcome in to the SKOL Purple Podcast. I'm gonna go ahead and just say right from the get-go, I know that there are lots and lots of Vikings podcasts out there, but I enjoy talking about the Vikings probably more than I enjoy watching them, honestly. I don't know how Chris feels. He's going to join me in a minute, but if you're wondering why would you start a Vikings podcast, there's so many already. But Chris might be struggling to get in here, but it's basically just for fun, you know, and if something becomes of it, we will be fine with that. We also have Chandler Holland, who is a guy I met up. He's from SDSU, went to SDSU. He Went to work with the Canaries back in 2019 with myself, and he's another guy that'll be joining us. Chris, you were in there for a minute. Now you're back out. Hopefully, you could get back in there. But yeah, I'm excited about this, and I think Chris and Chandler are both excited about this. It's like the Triple C. Like maybe we should rename this the Triple C Vikings podcast. I don't know, something crazy, but got Chandler, Carson, and Chris all in this podcast. So Chandler's not going to be joining us today. He's got some family plans this weekend, but he might join us tomorrow because we're going to do a post-game reaction video to the game tomorrow. There is a game tomorrow, and it's not much of, it probably won't be much of a game in terms of like the value of the game itself, but it might the Vikings obviously want to win it, even though I really don't think they should, because get a little better draft capital, because it's a meaningless game. But that's just my 2 cents on it. Chris, there you are.
Here I am.
Yeah, wow. Your first entrance back into the podcast. Here you are.
Yeah, I wanted to get those links out there, so I got them up on the Twitter and the Facebook. So hopefully we get some people rolling in.
Absolutely. Well, hey, Chris, before we get into our I guess talking about the Vikings this season and going forward, let's go ahead and just talk a little bit about how we became Vikings fans. So let's go ahead and we'll start with you on how you first got interested in watching the Vikings, how you got into purple purgatory, if you will.
Yeah, it really started with me. I was a fan of the Bengals, like as an early kid. And then, growing up, I went to elementary school, met a friend that really introduced me to the Vikings, and that's when I started watching. And that was sort of like the prime Adrian Peterson days, and Ponder, and I really got to like, that friend really got me watching the games, and we'd watch all the games at his place. And just growing up watching Vikings football, I loved it. There were times when it was like heartbreaking as a kid, to watch the Vikings play, but there were also really good times growing up as a Vikings fan. So I just want to say shout out to Andy, shout out to him for like really introducing me to the team and getting me inspired to follow their games and stuff.
Yeah, those were good days because of Adrian Peterson, and I think that's really it. I mean, I know Christian Ponder was not the reason you started watching Vikings games. But
no, obviously he wasn't the best, but I think he was the first quarterback I ever clicked in my mind as like a quarterback for the Vikings. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he is. He was one of the top. I remember Dante. That was kind of my first quarterback for me, and so I really enjoyed watching him for a few years before Chris Gamble pretty much ended his career by when Dante was sliding and got that knee injury. But and then of course we had Tavares Jackson and then Christian Ponder, and so it's been a long line of mediocre quarterbacks.
Joe Webb.
Joe
Webb.
In there. Yeah, you got Joe Webb. I mean, you had Brooks Bollinger. He started some games. You had Kelly Holcomb start some games. Sean Hill started some games. Oh, man. Gus Frerotte started some games. So, man, we could go on and on with all the different Vikings quarterbacks all through our years. And then you go over to Green Bay with them, and they've got two quarterbacks basically for the last 30 years. So it's like, man, if it would be nice to have that someday, And
Absolutely.
I feel like part of being a Vikings fan is wishing that we had a good quarterback. Like that's pretty much all it's been. And you know what? Kirk Cousins is probably a top 5 Vikings quarterback of all time, and maybe even top 3. I mean, you could make the case. The bar is not very high. So, I mean, you could make the case. I mean, Fran Tarkington is like the number 1. I mean, you can't put anybody past him. And then you maybe have an argument between him and, maybe you throw Randall Cunningham in there. I don't know. Maybe Dante is in that top 5 too. And then, of course, the 2009 year with Brett Favre, that was really special, but lots of interesting thoughts. I guess for me, as we'll probably be on a lot of tangents throughout the course of these episodes, but for me, for watching the Vikings, it started from a young age. I actually have pictures of me as a baby in Vikings gear and right in front of the TV, mesmerized by the game. And so my dad got me started at a young age. And then we grew up 5 miles south of the Minnesota border in northwest Iowa. So that really helped solidify the Vikings as my favorite team too. So my dad introducing me, he got a chance to watch some of the good years of the Vikings. Not a ton of the Purple People Eaters, I don't think, but he got to watch some of the 80s and 90s. 98 obviously was really fantastic until the end. Seems like it's every Vikings story of all time. It was really good until the end.
That
man.
98, that's like, I'm born in 99, so it's like I just missed out on that season, that 98 season.
And I was only 2, so I mean, it's not like I really enjoyed it, but it was there, and it was interesting to go back and like watch highlights of it, and just Randy Moss and Chris Carter and everybody just literally ripping through defenses. Just crazy to watch that offense. And now I can't even, I mean, we've had good offenses the last couple of years in some ways, but just not the dominating effect that the 98 team had. So,
right. And past that 98 team, it's like we have players here and there. We have people like Percy Harvin, Cordero Patterson, those standout guys. But I don't think we ever really had a sort of like wide receiver core like we had in that 98 season, or kind of like we have right now with our like Thielen, Osborne, and Jefferson. It really seems like we kind of have a core group of those guys in that room right now. But
yeah, it's been tough. It's been tough in some regards being a Vikings fan, but there's always that hope that we have of, someday it's going to happen, right? That's what our hope will be until we die.
Eventually August will come around, and who knows if it'll be under Zimmer or under a new coach, but fans will be out there at training camp watching the guys get ready. And, I'm sure we'll have hopes as high as we did next year. So that's always, I mean, it seems like every year the goal is that high for the Vikings, and, we'll see how it goes next year. But I don't know. We could talk about that a little more later on, but what we expect out of next year, but that's a whole nother topic, I guess.
Yes, it is. Let's go ahead and do that right now. Let's talk about, actually, let's first go into this game, and let's just talk about the game before we get into next season. So without getting any off-season topics or anything of that nature, because I mean, I don't think a lot is riding on this game in terms of what's going to happen in the offseason. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but I feel like pretty much whatever's going to happen in the offseason has already been solidified. Like, I don't think this game is going to determine Mike Zimmer's future, and I don't think it's going to determine Rick Spielman's future. I feel like that's already been determined based on the previous games. I don't think this game's going to have any bearing. I really hope it isn't, because if it is, then and Mike Zimmer wins, then Vikings will keep him. And we'll be stuck at 8-8 for the rest of our lives, maybe. But I don't think you can say that this game is going to have any bearing on what the Vikings decide to do. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but I'll let you go ahead.
Right. And, like thinking about, I think the Wolves, I had read somewhere that they had talks already about, Mike Zimmer's future with the team and everything. So one would think, that given all the stuff that's happened over the past couple of games, dropping that blowout to the Packers had to have some sort of impact on his job. But I'm with you in saying that I don't think that this Bears meaningless game where it's sort of like we're also have a lot of COVID issues going on with players being out for the Bears and stuff like that. So given that, and I just think it's going to be sort of like a shootout, blowout kind of game. Yeah, it's not going to have much of an impact on, what's going to happen moving forward. But it'll still be pretty fun to watch, though. You know what I mean? Seeing how Kirk does against that Bears defense, seeing if his trade stock goes up a little bit or stays the same. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't think it will have too much bearing on it, but the trade stock, that is, but it'll be interesting. But let's talk about the X's and O's a little bit. Not that either one of us are experts in the X's and O's, really. We've observed football for a long time. We've seen a lot of bad football, so I think we're pretty well versed in knowing what bad football is like. Is that what you would say, Chris?
I would say I've seen a lot of bad football. I've seen teams that had hope that were just thrown away by a bad field goal kick. So many missed kicks, so many times where we couldn't stop the run. We didn't blitz, enough people at Aaron Rodgers or no, not at Aaron Rodgers, at Jared Goff, and we lost that Lions game. So many things, you know what I mean, that I guess I forgot what the question even was, but I hope that's a good answer.
That's good enough for me. Well, let's go ahead and break this down a little bit. Vikings and Bears. We know Justin Fields is not going to be playing for the Bears on Sunday. He got put on the COVID list. And so the Vikings will have to face the Red Rifle, Andy Dalton, on Sunday, tomorrow. And so it should be interesting to see. I think Andy Dalton actually beat the Vikings last year. I think he was with Dallas, I want to say. And he started for Dallas last year. And I think the Vikings lost to Andy Dalton last year. So anything is possible. I mean, we also lost to Cooper Rush, who never had started an NFL game. So anything is possible to lose. But I just have this is going to go one of two ways. I feel like on Sunday, either the Vikings are going to blow out the Bears, or they are just going to come out flat. They are going to look completely done with this season, and the Bears are going to eke out a win. I mean, that's pretty much two of the only outcomes in the game, I guess. But I feel like that's to me what's going to happen. Like the Vikings will come out and win handily in a meaningless game, which I could definitely see that happening. Like that would be a Vikings move right there. Or they will just come out flat, look like they did against Green Bay last week, and since it's the Bears, they will probably lose in a close game, which we haven't had any of those this season, have we?
None. Absolutely zero.
So just interesting to me how the season has played out. I mean, there's lots of close games. And Zimmer, it's interesting when Zimmer talks about it in the press conferences. He's like, yeah, it happens every week, and it happens every week in the NFL. It's like you literally are tied for the most in history, I believe, close games in a row. Like before the Packers game, I think we were tied for the most one-score games in a row in NFL history, I think. Don't quote me on that, but so yeah, no, it does not happen that many times every time. That's my whole
thing. The funny thing about that is, and the funny thing about that is, like, I saw a picture, like, if you flip the scores of like the one-score games we've had, we're still not in the playoffs. Yeah, it just blows my mind. You know what I mean?
Right, because the wins that we have also have been by one score. So if you flip those, then it's L's there too. So. But yeah,
but you talked about Mike Zimmer and his post game conferences. It's starting to become kind of hard to watch those. It's everything. He's like, we're just going to keep fighting, go out there, and our guys are going to be good to go. And it's like we've seen week after week, your guys not ready to go when you go out there. So. That's kind of the problem, He's like, we say we're just going to keep fighting, but where's the fight? Especially with that last game against the Packers. It was like, what is going on?
Yeah, there was no fight in that game against Green Bay in the second half in particular, but in the first half, I thought the defense didn't play too bad in that first quarter mainly, but then. I mean, because they held Green Bay to a couple of field goals, I think. They got down there, the classic Zimmer bend but don't break defense, because he's been so good at that. It seems like that's really what he has been really good at, I feel like, just through his tenure, is like he'll allow teams to go down the field. Like the Vikings are never usually top 10 or top 5, I don't think, in yardage allowed, but they're always in that top 10, or at least when they have had a good defense, not the last couple of years. They've always been in the top 10 of points allowed. And that's where that defense between the 20s has succeeded. And that's what Zimmer has prided himself on over these years in Minnesota and prior to coming to Minnesota. At least that's what I think, but right.
And I don't want to throw all the blame on the defense either. It's like when you have a quarterback like Sean Mannion out there going 3 and out every drive, and you're having the Vikings defense going 100 yards against Rodgers every drive, it's like, what can you expect? I mean, especially in that second half, it's like,
oh gosh,
you're gonna keep Mannion out there instead of, take a shot on Mond. See if you can at least get a first down.
Literally anybody different than Sean Mannion. I honestly, the only reason I've said this on Twitter before, the only reason he is on the team is because he knows the playbook. And he's a veteran. He's not going to make many mistakes. Those are the couple reasons there. And well, that's great. You know the playbook. Well, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to actually throw the ball downfield, or are you going to, like even the deep shot that he did take on Sunday, which didn't come until later in the game, it was over the head of the receiver by 10 yards or more. So it's like, why are you even in the game right now? Kellen Mond came in because of one drive where supposedly Zimmer said Mannion was hurt. That's the only reason that Mond actually came in the game, which is also alarming. But I don't know why you would even think of having Mannion go out there in the last little bit of the game. Like, what's the point of having a guy that might not even be on a roster in the NFL next year lead you through a game where you're already being blown out?
And let me ask you something. Given that we had signed Kyle Sloter back before the game, would you have rather seen Kyle Sloter out there than Mannion?
Oh, yeah, I would have rather seen him. But if I was the coach in that situation, I probably would have had Mannion inactive, and I would have probably started Mond and then have Sloter as the backup. Is probably what I would have done. But but you know what though? Kyle Sloter, he made $50,000 for being on the roster for that short amount of time. So he didn't get to play, but 50 grand. I mean, that's it's not a bad payday for being on a team for 2 days or less.
Especially after he had been with the team for a while. He played really well in some exhibition matches, and still, the team sort of moved on from him, and that's when we got into Kirk Cousins and everything. So, like, hey, at least he could say, they didn't give me a shot, but I'm $50,000 richer because of them. Hopefully someone can give that kid like an opportunity. You know what I mean? He's shown a lot of talent, especially with the Vikings.
Chris, let's focus back on the Bears game tomorrow, as much as I really don't want to. What do you think about this game? Do you kind of have that same feeling like it could go either way? The Vikings will come out and just blow them out, or they could just be flat. Where are you leaning in this?
Watching some of the player interviews leading up to the game from Kirk Cousins and Dalvin Cook and some of those guys, especially Dalvin Cook, not much Kirk Cousins, but he was like, our guys are going to come out and play, and like every week, like we always do. And so, I think Dalvin's going to be especially amped up after that, short performance that he had last week. And, hopefully we get a big game out of him. So, looking at the game as a whole, I think if we can get some offense going, especially with Kirk Cousins back, I like odds and stuff. And like you mentioned earlier, with Justin Fields being out and their backup quarterback being in, that of course helps their defense tremendously. So it's kind of a 50-50 toss-up, like you said. Like I kind of lead more towards Vikings coming out with a fire under their butt, and even though they don't have anything to play for, they put it all out there for Zim. But also we've seen past weeks where they haven't came out to play, and they sort of just laid an egg. But I tend to lean towards they'll come out with a sense of urgency instead of laying an egg against the Chicago Bears and Andy Dalton.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think if there's any chance of them coming out flat and losing that game, if they lose that game, I don't see there's any chance you keep Zimmer. I think that'll just be the writing on the wall. But like I said, I don't think that this game should have that kind of capability where if he wins, we keep him. If he loses, we cut him. It's like this game is meaningless. So for me, but yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I think the team's going to come out inspired, so to speak, and get the win. I'm going to go ahead and say prediction here, 30-9, the final score. What do you think?
Hey. Yeah, I don't know. I think Andy Dalton can throw for a couple touchdowns, and we've shown that we can't really stop the run, and they've got David Montgomery too. I think we we let him put up a lot of points, but Kirk Cousins comes out and tries to prove that he's the guy. So I'm thinking like what, like 35-28 Vikings.
35-28. Yeah, I think the whole team is just going to come out inspired. That's what I really think. The only thing that makes me hesitate with that 30-9 prediction is the fact that we've got so many guys that are on the COVID list. I don't know if you saw all the people, like literally our entire offensive line. So maybe we won't score 30 points tomorrow, but I just kind of have that feeling that they're going to go out and win this meaningless game by a good margin. The defense, I think, is going to play its best game. I really do think that. I just do. We're gonna sit here and just be like, well, where was this the entire season? And we're gonna not be surprised, really. I mean, we're gonna be like, yep, this is pretty much how we expected it to go. I think that the biggest thing for me is I don't want to see this team, the like I said with the Zimmer thing, is like I don't want to see it just be the decision maker for why the Vikings, cut him or keep him. But I think I in some ways I would like to see Zimmer go out on top with a win in an 8-8 season, basically. But in another sense, I would love to see us climb up the draft pick possibilities a little bit, if possible, and position ourselves a little bit better that way too. I don't know what are you thinking on that?
Well, the thing that frustrates me about Zim and this game in particular is his inability to play the rooks, get the rookies out there and get them some reps. And I think that's what a lot of fans wanted, right? Is to see that like Jeff Surratt out there, see these guys like Cam Bynum, Amir Smith-Marset, all these guys that, Wyatt Davis, these guys that we haven't seen all year, but we have this game to showcase them. And it's sort of turned into a game where it's Zim's pride and he's just going to go with his starters. But in that sense, it's like Zim isn't really looking out for the Vikings' future by looking at these guys. He's sort of just looking out for his own betterment, just trying to ensure the win.
Yeah.
Classic Zim.
Yep, exactly. Like, I know he probably didn't say it like this, but I could just, in the back of his mind, thinking to the players, you're going to go out there and win this damn game for me. And, maybe that's a little bit strong language, but I could see Zimmer probably using even stronger words, honestly. You're going to save my job right now. Like, you're going to go out there and save my job or else, kind of a situation. But, well, what else are you going to do, Zim? To me too, like, I know nobody's really talked about this because we know Mike Zimmer loves football, but why doesn't he retire at the end of this year? Like, if I was him, I'd consider that, if I'm the Wilfs, honestly, and Rick Spielman, I would say, I've got a couple of options for you. Like, we don't want to bring you back next season, first of all. Secondly, if we think you should maybe consider retiring, either or retiring or resigning, or, mutually part ways, as they say. But because for me, like, Zimmer's got this really good looking girlfriend, supposedly, that, he's still got some of his family and to be able to see. And he's got his hunting ranch in Kentucky, and Go hunt for multiple months out of the year and,
You know, I think the thing
enjoy
about
your
Zim
life.
is, I think the thing about Zim is like I don't foresee him getting out of football anytime soon. And I think
Exactly.
he's even said that like before. It's like he's going to coach until he's dead. So I love Zim. I I'm a guy that I'm frustrated with him recently, but he's a guy that came in when the Vikings were at a really low time, and he really brought us to be a decent franchise. But we just can't get over that hump, and I wish him the best. But Zim, it's time to move on. Like you said, you got so much family around too. Like think about it. You can just relax during the season, watch the other teams, and hang out with your girlfriend, like you said. So we'll see
Yeah.
what's in the cards for him.
Now, I did say that with the idea that I know Mike Zimmer will probably not do it because he's Mike Zimmer and he loves football. And yeah, I agree with you. I think he's probably going to coach till he's dead. Now, now the question is for this game or past this game, I should say. Let's delve into this a little bit, the offseason stuff. So, let's say the Vikings move on from Zimmer. It's obviously not going to be before the game. Otherwise, it would have happened probably 6 days ago. But it's more than likely going to happen either right after the game, but I'm expecting it to happen on Monday, is when I expect the news to come out. It'll be either early Monday morning or the middle of the day sometime, would be my guess. And so the question then becomes for Zimmer, okay, if I'm another franchise, do I want to bring him in as a defensive coordinator, or do I consider giving him a shot again at the head coach position somewhere? That's my question as somebody that would be looking at him. Where would you lean in that? Defensive coordinator or head coach?
I think we've seen a couple of the good seasons with Zim leading that Bengals defense in particular back in the day. So we've seen him have some great success. Even like in a non-head coach position, I think he even has a Super Bowl. You know what I mean? It's like Zimmer. I think he does have potential to be a really effective defensive coordinator. He can get his guys fired up, and I think he knows that side of the ball really well. But the thing about a head coach is, in my opinion, is that I like a head coach that is sort of well-rounded, and it's kind of been clear that Zim sort of just puts the offense in the offensive coordinator's hands, and he'll say, "Oh, run the ball, run the ball, run the ball," but doesn't have a hands-on approach to that side of the ball. So, in my opinion, yeah, more of a defensive coordinator, but maybe he could coach in like college or something. He could have a good head coaching job there. Maybe, I don't know.
Be the next Lovey Smith, the old defensive guy to go into college and take over a football team. I could see that possibly. I don't think there's any way he won't get another shot in the NFL. I think somebody will bite on him at the very least as a defensive assistant before he would ever consider going to college. And so do you see him having a position higher than, so you kind of think the defensive coordinator, do you think that it's more likely that, or do you think that there's a team that's more than likely going to try and get him as kind of like a defensive assistant or like the assistant head coach slash linebacker or defensive backs probably would be for Zimmer, defensive backs coach?
I think that would be pretty interesting. You know, but I think the thing about Zimmer is he's the kind of guy that I think needs that would have a tough time answering in that kind of role to like a defensive coordinator. I mean, I don't see that jump going. That's kind
Yeah.
of a big jump, isn't it? From going from like head coach to defensive backs and assistants. So I don't know if Zim could like do that at this point in his career, especially after like this season it was supposed to be a Super Bowl season, you know, as a head coach, but I don't know.
I feel like that's every season as a Vikings fan, 2017, 2009, 1998, it's like we were supposed to go. And you know what? I was fully convinced, well, not fully, but 95% convinced in 2017 when Stephon Diggs, do I need to say more, did his thing. He convinced me very much so that the Vikings were going to go to the Super Bowl, because at the point when Drew Brees had led that drive to take the lead, I was like, okay, season's over. There's no way we're going to be able to get down the field in a short amount of time with no timeouts. And then Diggs did it. He just did it, and then of course, the Saints messed up a little bit there too, Marcus Williams, but the Vikings pulled off something that they never do, a miracle. And that was the point when I was like, man, this team might be the team to finally take us to the promised land. And then we get rolled in Philly. So
And we got absolutely rolled. What was it, like 38-7? It wasn't even close.
Yeah.
Dude.
Yep. And that's been part of my thing too with Zimmer. It's been even more prevalent with Cousins, but Zimmer's been really good at coming up with these 500 seasons, or, that kind of thing too. Because even before Cousins, it seemed like the Vikings were every other year where, okay, playoff team this year. Nope, this year we're going to be 8-8. Playoff team, 8-8. Playoff team, 8-8. That's kind of how it was for about 6 years until the last 2 years with Zimmer. And now here we are missing the playoffs 2 years in a row. And Zimmer's got what, 2 playoff wins in his tenure now? So both of them against the Saints, which I enjoy immensely, but
dude, you know what's crazy about that? Both of his playoff wins are close games. Like, they're plays that came down to the last minute. It's like, it'd be nice to have a coach in here that we could just win like an important game like that by like 14 or 21 points, so we don't have to like go through that, but especially when it's the Saints, let's just blow out the Saints. But
right. And we were close to doing that, and then all of a sudden Keenum throws the pick, and it's like, oh boy, here we go. So that is interesting. Okay, so my question now for you is, so we've talked about Zimmer and his future. I guess we haven't fully talked about from your perspective. Do you think he's gone?
Before I answer that, how many viewers are we up to? What are we looking at?
I don't think we're up to very many, maybe 1, 2. But like I said, at the beginning, if we only have one person watching, or nobody watching, like just talking Vikings with you and Chandler, it's fun. I enjoy talking about this stuff. And like I said, I don't know if you were here when I said this, it's almost like I enjoy talking about the Vikings more than I enjoy watching the Vikings. But that's also partly because we put up 8-8 seasons. It's like, well, I don't really enjoy 8-8 seasons.
Right. I almost enjoy like scrolling through Twitter, reading about the Vikings more than actually watching the games. It's like, reading about what could be, like who we could bring in that quarterback, or like who we could have as like defensive coordinator, head coach, or what could be. So like the future's bright, but then of course we still got to watch that game on Sunday.
Right. Yep. All right, Chris. So do you think Zimmer is for sure 100% gone, or do you think that they're going to keep him for another year?
Oh my goodness. That's the question. It's really, I think, going to come down to the Wolves and like if they're going to stick with their like continuity, or if they think, enough fans are going to be upset if we keep Zimmer in here, right? And I think the latter is going to be true. That if Zimmer is around, I don't see the fan base. I see a lot of fans that will cancel season tickets. Things will happen, and this is just me speculating, but there's a lot of emotions running around, like the whole fire Zimmer thing. And I think as a fan base, we just want results and stuff. So, that being said, if Zimmer's here next year, I'll be all in with my guy Zim and our Vikings. But personally, I think there's just too many like head coach options out there that are better at this point. And I think if Zim made a playoff push, that would have just like done a lot for his chances of coming back, especially because he's on a contract, right? There's that contract that's there. So like at this point, being eliminated and everything, I just see them going somewhere else. But you never know. They might just stick with that contract and see it through.
Yeah, I am convinced that he's gone. I think he's gone. I don't think the Wolves are going to bring him back. I think the fact that they are meeting on Sunday, I don't know if you saw that, but they're meeting on Sunday to talk about the plans moving forward. You don't do that if you're not about to make a big move. Like, you're going to fire your head coach. You're going to maybe even fire your GM. You're going to maybe move on from both of them, which we can talk about that here in a moment too. But I don't think there's any way Zimmer's back next year. And then it comes into question, okay, well, then if you keep Rick Spielman, what's his move going to be? If you don't keep Rick Spielman, or if you move him up into a higher role, which I've heard that speculation too, higher role, not really much of a higher role than GM in my opinion. I guess player operations or whatever, but I don't think he's back. I don't think Zimmer's back, and I speculate that Spielman might also be taking the train out of town or the plane out of town. But I don't know. I'm more confident that Spielman will be back. What would be very interesting though is if the Wolves are like, no, we like Mike Zimmer. We think he's the man to do this. That guy over there, Rick Spielman, he's out. We don't think he's the guy. And I don't know if you saw this. This was interesting to me. There was a tidbit that came out about how the whole Cousins thing was a huge dividing point for Rick Spielman and Mike Zimmer, because they were saying, there was people saying that, I don't even know who it was or where it came from, but that Zimmer was 100% against signing a big name quarterback, no matter who it was, Kirk Cousins or otherwise, because he had built the defense to be able to win. And part of that was free agency and the guys that they brought in. And then lo and behold, a couple of years ago, we had to get rid of a bunch of contracts because, the quarterback makes $35 million. I know, crazy, right? It's like when you give somebody that kind of money, you got to make moves like that. And I think Spielman now realizes what he did in bringing in Cousins, because they were to the absolute end of the cap multiple times where they had to make moves, and they had to cut guys. They had to get rid of Xavier Rhodes. They had to get rid of Linval Joseph, different guys like that were big names on this defense. And it's all because of the mismanaged situation with bringing in Cousins. Because if you make that kind of move and if you look into the future, like if you're a GM, you got to look into the future years in advance, especially if you want to keep your job. Because Spielman should have been looking into the future way before these contracts came up. Like, okay, if we sign Cousins in 2 years, our cap is going to be this amount. But Spielman didn't do anything to fix that before that time. He could have traded Xavier Rhodes. He could have traded anybody of those players to think, okay, let's trade them and get some value, get my beloved draft picks that we know Slick Rick likes to have, especially 6th and 7th. I mean, even if you got a 6th or a 7th out of a guy, at least you get something instead of, oh, no, we're just going to let him walk in free agency. But I mean, Xavier Rhodes, if you would have traded him after 2017, imagine the trade value.
These guys like Xavier Rhodes, Mike Woods is a Pro Bowler this year. We just let him walk away. It's like these guys, we're letting him go because we bring in this Kirk Cousins at this enormous hit on our salary cap. The thing that frustrates me the most, especially between Spielman and Zimmer, is Spielman will bring in these guys, these athletic talent guys, right? Chaz Surratt, Kene Nwangu, all these guys that show
Cordero Patterson
numbers. Cordero Patterson. These guys that are doing great numbers in the combine, but maybe they didn't have a great college career. And he brings those guys in, and Zim sees that and says, these guys don't have any experience, so they're going to ride the bench. And unfortunately, that's like what we saw this year. We couldn't see our all of those draft picks we had in this last draft were just on the bench. Kellen Mond wasn't suiting up until like one of the last games. So that GM head coach system of bringing in these guys that the head coach doesn't want to play, it's like something's got to change in that system. One of them's got to go, both of them's got to go, but I don't think they both can stay.
And I think part of the problem is Rick Spielman is just too nice of a guy to really admit when he made a mistake. I shouldn't say that. Too nice of a guy to argue too much with Zimmer about some of that stuff. And it's obvious, I think, right now that both Zimmer and Spielman don't see eye to eye based on the last draft and how that's panned out. And then also based on like what you had said and what we talked about with the Cousins thing. I mean, if you don't have a quarterback that your GM and coach agree on, that's a big problem. I mean, that if you don't have confidence as a coach in your quarterback, which I honestly, if I would guess in that first year, especially for Zimmer, I don't think he had much confidence in Kirk Cousins. I really don't. And, I think part of it was he was kind of sour about the whole, he's taking up this amount of cap, but it's just a really interesting talking point because Spielman and Zimmer are at the point where I don't think you definitely cannot keep both of them. You cannot roll into 2022 with both of them. There's no way, based on everything I've heard and the disagreements between him and Zimmer. And honestly, in some ways, I kind of think that maybe Zimmer was right in the sense of, just roll with a quarterback that's not as talented, as long as he can make some throws here and there and we can run the ball effectively and we have this stellar defense on the other side. I mean, I personally don't like that brand of football because I love offense, but it was working. It was working in 2016 before the Vikings collapsed. Surprise. And then it was working in 2017 until the end. So,
yeah. And the thing about it was before we brought Kirk in, we had options at quarterback. We had like Teddy Bridgewater. We had Case Keenum, who was our quarterback. Teddy was coming back the next year that we had.
Yeah.
And I don't even know, maybe even Sam Bradford was on the table. He had a good year for us too. All these guys that you could have saved so much money on salary, just like we could have added so many pieces on the defense. And like you said, all we needed is just like kept guys.
Or traded them.
Was just Yeah, we just needed a decent quarterback. We didn't need like an all-star Pro Bowler, and that's what they did. They brought in with Kirk Cousins, who, okay, I wouldn't say he was even at that point in his career. Like he was just on the Washington's football team, and he was good, but not great. And we bring him in at this high number. So I don't know what you think about that, but it's about like bringing in Kirk.
Yeah, the whole shtick with Kirk is he is consistent. The problem is he is not consistently good. He is consistently, average or slightly above, but he's never good enough to win you those games where you need to win. And if you're making that kind of money that he is making, you've got to be able to put your team over the edge in terms of competing for the playoffs, let alone a championship. Like Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, maybe you could make the case that Tom Brady hasn't had to put his team over the edge because of how talented they are the last few years. But those are the quarterbacks that make their team go past their actual potential. Like that's not Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins is going to benefit from when the team is shaped to exactly what he needs it to be, which is pretty much strengths across the board. He needs good wide receivers. He needs a good offensive line, and he needs a pretty solid running back, I would say. Maybe not as much of on the running back side, but the offensive line and receivers thing, I would say, is pretty accurate. So why do you bring in a guy like that? And the Vikings maybe didn't know this at the time, that Kirk was just going to be this 8-8 quarterback for the entirety of his career. But at the same time, you gotta, why did they give him that extension? That's another thing that I think. And if the only way you can extend Cousins to me is if you lower his cap hit, and it's got to be lower than $30 million. It's got to be between. Honestly, I would be uncomfortable giving him more than 25. Like that's like, to me, that's the number. That's the highest number I would go with Kirk Cousins on an extension.
It's got to come down if Kirk's going to stay in. And it'd be a different story if Kirk has shown flashes of being that leader as a quarterback, being that guy, that Tom Brady, that Aaron Rodgers, who will lead his team to victory. But Kirk goes out there every day, and he seems like he's like worried about his own performance and getting the stats, and that's good for him, but it's not good for the team. You know what I mean? So it's like there's this guy that is. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see a Kirk Cousins stat pad game against the Bears too, but he just hasn't been that guy to go out and lead this team. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And the thing too is we've seen him get into trouble with his receivers. We've seen Adam Thielen act up on the sidelines with him. We've seen Justin Jefferson upset with him on the sidelines at times. Maybe not as maybe not as clear as the Thielen one. Was it last year? I think it might have been when Thielen was upset on the sideline, but you can tell that the receivers get frustrated because there are so many times when you go back and look at a highlight where Kirk Cousins dumped the ball off to Dalvin Cook, and you could see wide open Justin Jefferson in the back end of the defense, or Adam Thielen, he just starts to come free or whatever. It's like, Kirk, you had time. Like a lot of times those are the throws he has time on where he dumps it off too soon. It's like you're a quarterback that's been in the league for how long now? How long before you start taking those shots down the field?
It's been so long since even this year. It's been a couple games since I've seen Kirk really like air it out and take those shots. Like we saw one to Justin Jefferson, like the first drive of the game against one of our recent opponents, and then it just died off. But like that's the thing with Kirk is like he has those talented receivers. It seems like every play, at least one of them down the field is getting open. But and we have this line that it's giving Kirk time, and Kirk is just dumping it off, taking the easy completion and making sure that quarterback rating is staying high. So it's like those little 5-yard plays are nice to Dalvin, but when it comes down to like your 3rd and 10, 3rd and 15, I mean, let's take a shot. Let's get that first down instead of dumping it off. Like, come on.
Yeah. I'm not totally against shorter passes on 3rd down, but when they happen every time on those 3rd and longs, that gets to be too much. Like, you've got to have some faith in your offensive line and your quarterback, or if you're Cousins, you got to have some faith in your offensive line and receivers to be able to go down the field and catch the football, or be able to protect you long enough to throw the ball to your open receiver. I think that's just been a problem. And I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this. The 2021 Vikings are so good at not playing as a team. That is what I have noticed. And by that, I mean the offense will look great in stretches, and then the defense will collapse. The defense will look great in stretches, and then the offense just looks putrid. And we saw that on last Sunday night. We saw it. Sean Mannion did nothing in that first half. And the defense played really well in that first quarter of that game and even into the second quarter at times. And what did the Vikings offense do? Zero. Nothing. Not a thing. And the same can be said when the Vikings offense starts to go down and score. Then the defense all of a sudden is like, no, we can't make a stop. We can't do this. And, maybe you got to credit the other teams a little bit, but this team just does not play together. Like, they don't feed off each other's energy. And I think last Sunday night was the perfect storm in terms of that, where the teams do not play as a team, or both sides of the ball do not feed off each other and they don't play as a team. I don't know what are your thoughts on that, Chris?
Well, yeah, like you said, like when the offense is clicking, I think those are the games that we had a chance to win. And that I'm sure we let the defense, run it back with some points, but we had points on the board too. But those games, like last game against the Packers, where we had absolutely zero offense, it just didn't work out for us. And our defense was just, absolutely tired in the second half. So I think we just need to find that balance, like get our offense going every single week with the defense. And I think that comes down to coaching, really comes down to coaching in the end. And working on a game plan that, so
Chris just said it right there.
Because there's so much talent on this team. There's so much talent on this offense and on this defense.
I know.
Especially when we have,
going back to that Packers game a minute, as much as I don't want to. Why did Zimmer think it was a good idea for Patrick Peterson to not shadow Davante Adams until Davante Adams started to catch the ball? Like, let's just wait a little bit, see if Mr. Chris Boyd can cover him for a while. Let's see if Aaron Rodgers, the best quarterback in football right now, I would argue, probably at least top 2, top 3. Let's see if Aaron Rodgers notices Chris Boyd playing on Davante Adams. No way is that going to happen. Why would you not shadow Patrick Peterson on Davante Adams? There's no reason. I mean, I'm not saying that Peterson would have held Davante Adams in check, but he would have had a lot better chance of it than Chris Boyd.
Yeah, I mean, Was Cam Dantzler? I mean, was Cam Bynum playing against the Packers?
Cam Bynum, I think, was. Cam Dantzler was not. He was on the COVID list or out for some reason.
Yeah. So like, we just did not have the personnel to go up against that Packers wide receivers like Allen Lazard. Chris Boyd could not even guard him.
No.
Let alone Devontae Adams. So absolutely got mossed by Allen Lazard in the end zone, which is like, oh my God, come on, Chris. I love Chris Boyd. He's so funny, but when you get burned like that, it's like, come on, guy. But absolutely ridiculous that Zim didn't like put Patrick Peterson, our guy, like our highlight of our secondary. Maybe even like put Harrison Smith over him, like lock him down and lock down AJ Dillon. Because AJ Dillon just ran all over us. It was crazy. Mm-hmm. Like we didn't have any sort of run defense, and that's how they got those those passing shots on us. So it was doomed from the start. Like when we don't have that run defense there, we're going to get burned every play.
And to me, it's weird too how bad the Vikings run defense has been this year. When you bring in guys like Dalvin Tomlinson, Michael Pierce was back after being on the COVID list a year ago, and your run defense has been this putrid all season. And they've had injuries. Danielle Hunter's no longer there. And Everson Griffin, we hope, first of all, that he gets better, but he's obviously not on the team anymore. So, I mean, I know your defensive line has changed, but the middle of that defensive line has been intact for at least a decent amount of the season. And those are the guys that are supposed to help you defend against the run. And I think probably I haven't seen very many plays in this season where I'm just like, oh man, that was a huge play by Dalvin Tomlinson. That was a huge play by Michael Pierce. And I don't know if that's just because the offensive lines we've played have been so good, or if it's just that they have been struggling with, I know Pierce was out for a year, and Tomlinson, maybe more of the attention's gone to him and he's not able to get to the ball carrier. But man, when you have that, opens up the holes too, supposedly, for Eric Kendricks to come in there. Anthony Barr, who's also been hurt part of the season, which is kind of become normal for Anthony Barr, which is unfortunate as well. But man, it's hard to believe, of all the things on this defense that is bad, it's the run defense. Like that's the struggling thing, or the, I don't know, confusing thing in my mind.
Especially as Vikings fans, we've seen this team like have good run defenses in the past. Like gone are the days when we had Pat Williams. That's his name, right?
The Williams wall, Pat and Kevin.
Dude, they locked it down. They had those running backs stuffed up. But like you said, I don't think I've heard like much Pierce or Tomlinson all year. And these are guys that I was so excited to watch. Like I thought we were going to be locked down this year. Especially like, I don't know, Pierce. I think Pierce has had a better year than Tomlinson now. I'll give Pierce that, but still, like it's been pretty hard to watch.
Yeah, for sure. So now let's go ahead and I feel like we've got about 1 billion topics that we could go down here, but we'll probably try and end by 4:00, I suppose, today. Let's go ahead and go ahead. Were you gonna say something, Chris?
I got some lineups in the 3:45 game that I still need to build.
Okay.
Do you think you could go until like 3:30 or so? 3:35.
Sure. Let's do that. We should actually probably be off for a couple of those games anyway. So, yeah, we'll make that work. Let's go into Rick Spielman. Where do you land on where should Rick Spielman be next year? Should he be with the Vikings still as the GM? Should he be with the Vikings in a different role, or should he be fired? Where do you land on that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, Rick Spielman has had had success in our organization, bringing in guys like Eric Kendricks, Anthony Barr, guys like that who have been crucial to this defense. And but of course, he's had a lot of strikeouts too. So personally, I think we go the route of keeping Spielman on in a different role. Personally, I think he's played his time through. We need to bring in someone new as general manager because it just hasn't gone well, man. He hasn't been bringing in guys that will fit our system well and fit in our head coach's system. So personally, I don't want to move on from Spielman like entirely. He's done so much. He's done a lot for our organization. But yeah, it'd be nice to see him in a. I don't know what that new role would be, but basically that's what I think about Rick Spielman at this point. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, and I don't know if he should be the sole person to pick out the new GM, but he could maybe have a say with the Wilfs and kind of sit down with them and say, yeah, I think that would be a good choice, or no, that would not be a good choice. I mean, I trust his opinion somewhat. I mean, I'm not, like I said, I'm not solely convinced that he should be the only voice in terms of picking the new GM, but I think I think he could have a say in it. I wouldn't be totally opposed to that, but um,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's probably the best move too. And I personally want a full restart with the coach, the GM, the quarterback, because I think if you bring in a new GM and a new coach, I mean that the Vikings aren't going to make any trades before before the end of the season because the trade deadline's passed, and they're not going to make any trades with this regime anymore because they aren't going to happen to the offseason unless the regime stays. But um, I think whoever the new GM and the new coach are, they'll either agree to keep Kirk Cousins or they'll agree to part ways and trade him to another team, which could definitely happen either way. I think so. Um, it'll be interesting
I
to
like
me.
that. I like that. The only thing I want to add is, can we get Clint Kubiak out of that job?
Yeah. So my only thing with Clint is I'm not sure he's been given a fair opportunity because I feel like Zimmer is literally breathing down his neck on every play call he makes. So it's like, all right, Clint, you got to run the ball here. You got to run the ball on this play right now. Run the ball. You know, I don't know if you saw that clip that I posted on Twitter of Zimmer like saying, "Yeah, sometimes my communication gets cut off, and or
Yeah.
Kubiak will talk over me, and he can't hear me when I say something to him." It's like that's another thing I don't want with the next regime. I want whoever you get. If you get a defensive minded head coach or an offensive minded head coach, I want them to be solely focused on their side of the ball in terms of making play calls. I don't want this, oh, I want you to call this. I want you to do this. Like if it's a game situation at the end of a game, that's fine. Like if you tell them to run the ball, but if it's constantly where they're coming at you, like, okay, you got to do this, you got to do that. That's not a
Yeah.
good way to run an organization. And Zimmer has never been an offensive guy. So the fact that he's telling the offensive coordinator to do that, and that's maybe also partly why the Vikings have had so many offensive coordinators in his tenure is because Zimmer's got to have this yes man almost. It seems like, and that's not a good way to run an organization. Not a good way to have a coaching staff.
That's such a good point. It does like seem like every year we have a new guest man in there. Um, yeah, I think you're right about that. Clint has like shown like we've seen some good plays this year and some like creativity with the deep ball, and we've been running the ball too much, and I think think with a new head coach in there, I'll give Clint a second chance. I've come
Yeah.
around.
Yeah, I don't know if I would say I want Clint to be fully in charge of the offense. Maybe you put him back at the quarterback coach or, passing game coordinator or running game coordinator, whatever they call him these days, but and maybe
Sure.
you bring in somebody that's got a little bit more experience, but maybe you do roll back with him next year. And again, I think that goes down to what the GM wants to do and what the new head coach wants to do too. If it's an offensive head coach, which I'm hoping for, then I would say he's probably not going to be calling plays next year. He might still be on the team, might be on the coaching staff, but honestly, it would not surprise me one bit if they totally clean house, the new GM and the new coach.
What'd you say
So,
that last part cut out? Can you still hear me?
Mike is
Can you hear me okay?
hello, hello, hello.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, okay, good.
Yep.
I don't know what happened there, but so yeah, it's interesting.
The thing is, like, we have Andre Patterson and Adam Zimmer and like coach. Yeah. One sec.
No, I was agreeing with you.
Oh yeah.
I think Andre Patterson deserves to stay. I don't know if I would keep Adam Zimmer, but I think Andre Patterson deserves a chance. Maybe even as the defensive coordinator. If it's an offensive guy that comes in, I wouldn't be opposed to keeping him as the DC. I mean,
he's been the guy that has been like the one to talk to the defense. I think, like, Adam Zimmer, he's had a role as, I mean, this is just going off an article I read, but he's had a role in like the offensive scheme. But Andre Patterson has shown that, like, that leadership role, talking to the guys, and it just, like, I don't know about you, but like the nepotism within this organization, it's a little bit old. It's like,
yes.
yeah, their dad is qualified, but how are we sure that their son is just as qualified?
Yeah.
So yeah, Andre Patterson, I think he could be the guy. Like, I think if not head coach, like defensive coordinator for sure.
Yeah, and I don't think I would make him the head coach, and it's nothing to do with anything about him personally. It just has to do with the idea that I don't want a defensive head coach. That's just my philosophy right out of the gate. So I'm up for bringing in Eric Bieniemy. Honestly, between him and actually, I don't know if you saw Jim Harbaugh possibly thinking about coming to the NFL, but why not bring him into the Minnesota Vikings organization? I would not be opposed to that. He nearly won a Super Bowl with San Francisco, and they canned him out of nowhere. Or, well, he went to Michigan, however that happened. But I would not be opposed to that.
No, I remember watching him coaching that 49ers team. They were good, man. Like, it was Kaepernick. I remember like that huge game, that huge like play call where it was like a reverse, and Kaepernick like took it in. Like, he's like, that's the offense I like. I would love to see these Vikings adapt, like a quarterback who's mobile and can run the ball, but can get the ball downfield. So I don't know if that guy's gonna be Kellen Mond, but hopefully we can, if we do go that route with a new offensive minded head coach, they can bring in a guy that fits that kind of style.
Yeah,
a quarterback.
Well, I think that's going to bring us to an end. We're over time already here. We got to get to our games. So, Chiefs and Broncos going on right now. So, should be fun. Chris, this was a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to tomorrow to discuss either a heartbreaking loss, which is definitely possible, or potentially a blowout win. We'll see what happens. Maybe it'll be a heartbreaking or a close win. You know, I could see that happening too. A close loss or a close win in Zimmer's final game. But I'm still sticking to my 30-9, and you said 35-28. Is that right?
Yep, that's right. Yeah.
All
It
right.
should be an interesting one, man. We'll see if Zimmer can get his guys ready and go out with a bang. And I look forward to tomorrow. Right, we're gonna do this
Yes,
again,
sir.
maybe.
Yes, sir. We're gonna hopefully have Chandler join us. We'll get his thoughts on what he thinks the organization should do, and of course, we'll talk about Vikings Bears and how that went, and look to the off season. That'll be coming up right after the game is over tomorrow here on the Schuby Show's YouTube channel. And so make sure to tune into that. Chris, it's been fun, and we will catch you tomorrow on the SKOL Purple Podcast. I've got to get that in my mind, before tomorrow, hopefully. So, all right. This